We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara Mesechet Kesubos. This is Kesuvos Daf 40b. On the previous Amud, Rabbi Zera said that it has to be that there's a separate boshes payment, and that payment depends on exactly how much embarrassment there was in the situation of rape. Because if there was not a separate boshes payment, so then we'd have a problem, because people are going to say a bas melachim and a bas hedyot, no matter what, they get the exact same amount. That can't be. And so Abaye now responds to Rabbi Zera and he says, what are you talking about? By an Eved, let's say you have a situation of an Eved that's killed by a shore. So there we know that there's one fixed payment of 30 shkalim. And we don't say that people are going to say that if you have a situation of an Eved who does very important work, that's going to be shloshim, and Maisa Machet shloshim, and then you'll also have an Eved who does Maisa Machet, who does just stitch work, that's also 30. We don't make that argument. We say that it's possible that somebody's going to have the exact same payment, that it doesn't matter what kind of Eved it is. And so the Gemara continues, Elo Amar Rabbi Zera, rather Rabbi Zera says, Ilu bo alel shnayim. The reason why we know that there's a separate boshes payment and that it's evaluated differently for each woman is because let's say you had a situation of a woman who was raped by two individuals. Echad kedarka, one had relations in the normal fashion. Ve'echad shelo kedarka, and one had relations in an abnormal fashion, meaning to say it was anally. In such a situation, Yomru, then also people will say, Boal shlema chamishim, if he had relations with a woman who was shlema, who was untainted, she gets 50, and Baal Paguma Chamishim, and also let's say you have a situation where already she was damaged, so to speak, she also gets 50, you can make the same argument. Rashi over here says, rather Rabbi Zera says, Mehacha mistabra, she'ein boshes bechlal chamishim. Here is the proof that the boshes payment is not included in the 50. Di'imkein ein hefresh bein Baal Shlema leBaal Paguma, because if you said that the 50 was the only payment there was, then you're going to make no distinction between Baal Shlema and Baal Paguma. Makes no difference if the woman is tainted or not. Shenivala shelo kedarka, meaning a situation of paguma would be a case, let's say, where she had relations shelo kedarka. What would be the distinction? Shma mina gabe boshes, so it must be that there is a boshes payment that takes into account what's happening over here. Kevan shenifka makvar, for example, if you had a woman who already was tainted, ein boshta rav kishlema, so then her boshes payment is not going to be as much as you taint a woman who was considered already a shlema. And so that's Rabbi Zera's argument, that there's a proof that there's a boshes payment that varies based on the situation. So Amar le Abaye, so again Abaye responds to Rabbi Zera, Yehochi, if so, Gabi Eved Nami, we can make the same argument by Eved. Yomru Eved Bari Shloshim, people will say you have a strong, healthy Eved, it's going to be 30. Eved Muka Shchin Shloshim, but also if you have an Eved that's a Muka Shchin, that's full of boils, he also gets Shloshim. But we know that is the case, it's always Shloshim, so you see that we don't make distinctions, even though there might actually be some technical differences. So Elo Amar Abaye, rather Abaye says the reason why we know that there's a separate boshes payment that varies based on the circumstance, Amar Krotz, because the pasuk says tachas asher ina. It says the payment of 50 that we're talking about is because of the fact that he oppressed her, that he afflicted her. Hani tachas asher ina. These payments are because of the ina, because of the fact again that he did something that was damaging to her. Mechlal deika boshes upagam. That seems to imply that there is a separate payment of boshes upagam that's not just because of the inoi. There's additional payments that are involved. Rashi over here says tachas asher ina gabe chamishim kesef ksiv. It says this by the 50 kesef. Mechlal de boshes upagam she'enam mishum inoi. You have payments that are because of the inoi, and then you have other payments as well. Sharayeshnam shar chovlin eno bechlal zeh. The boshes and pagam, that applies by any situation of damage. That's not only in a situation where he goes ahead and he rapes her. So the inoi, the fact that there was the rape over here, that's the 50 kesef, but the boshes and pagam, that's additional. Pagam hu nezek hanisham nami b'shar chavolos. Again, as we've said, pagam is the damage that happens to her, the fact that she lowers in terms of her value, she has a lower value, and again, that applies by all wounds. So tachas asher ina is one payment, and then you have the normal payments when you wound someone, that applies here as well. There is boshes and pagam. And the Gemara continues, Rava Amar, Rava says Amar Krotz, because the pasuk says a different source that we know boshes and pagam. V'nasan ho'ish hashochev imo la'avi hana'ara chamishim kasef. It says again the person has to pay 50 kesef. Hanoas shchiva nun. It seems to imply that the pleasure that he got from laying with her, that's the 50 kesef. Mechlal de'ika boshes upagam. That implies that there's still additional payments of boshes and pagam that apply. And the Gemara continues, ve'emo lidida. So why don't we say that these payments go to her? Now Rashi over here says, ve'emo lidida havid, the bishlama knas. I understand the knas payment. Ksiv bei v'nasan la'avi nara. It says you give it to the avi nara. Elahani la'hava lidida. But these other payments, it doesn't say that. So therefore, why do these payments go to the father? They should go directly to the girl. And so the Gemara says to that, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, binureha beis avia. When she's a nara, she's in the house of her father. Kol shvach nureh li'avia. All the profit that she makes as a nara, it goes to her father. So this would apply to this as well. These payments would go to her father. Rashi says, Binura Beisavia Gabe Nedarim Ksiv. Now this pasuk is written by oaths, saying that she's in the reshus of her father in terms of her oaths, that her father can annul them. Umiu ikol mishma mina. But nevertheless, we can understand from this as well that it applies to money. Devimenu rea talah hakasav bevesavia. That when she's a nara, she's bevesavia, and therefore again the payment goes to her father. But the Gemara continues, V'alahad Amar Rav Huna Amar Rav. But what about that which Rav Huna said in the name of Rav? Minayin shemaisa habas laavia. How do we know that the things that the daughter does, let's say again she makes any profit, she does any work, how do we know that that goes to her father? Shenamar, like the pasuk says, V'chiyimkor ish es bito liyama, talks about a person selling his daughter as a maidservant, and we make a comparison. Ma oma masa yodel rabba, just like by a maidservant, everything she does, it goes to her master. Afba, so to by a daughter, maisa yodel liyavia, everything that she does, it goes to her father. So lamali, so what do we need that comparison for in order to learn that out? If you're learning this out from Binura Beisavia, Teipuklemi Binura Beisavia, we should just learn it out from Binura Beisavia. If this pasuk of Binura Beisavia is not just talking about Nadarim, but it's talking about everything, so then you wouldn't need this pasuk over here about Maisa Yadayim, that the Maisa Yadayim of the bas go to her father. Rather, the Gemara says you're right. That pasuk of Binura Beisavia is not really relevant to this issue. That's talking specifically about Hafaras Nadarim, and so therefore again we still need a source that these payments go to the father. And so the Gemara says V'chi Teima Neilif Minei. Maybe you'll say we should learn from there. Let's learn from Hafaras Nadarim. Just like the Hafaras Nadarim is the father's doing, so too these payments go to the father. Memona Meisura Lo Yalfin, and that can't be. We don't learn mammon, we don't learn money from situations of Isser. V'chi Teima Neilif Miknas. And maybe you'll say, let's learn out from the Knas. Since the Knas payment goes to the father, these payments of Boshas and Pagam also go to the father. To that the Gemara again says, Memona Miknas Lo Yalfin, and we don't learn out mammon from Knas. Ela Mistabra, rather the Gemara says it's logical, Diavia have that it goes to her father, because he has the ability to marry her off to who he wants. He can marry her off to a menuvel, somebody who is disgusting, somebody who's not pleasing to her, somebody who's a mukashchin, he's full of boils, and therefore since he has that ability, he also collects this payment. Rashi over here says, Ela Mistabra de Boshas upagam de Avhav. It makes sense that the Boshas and Pagam go to the father, Shari Biyadu Levaisha, because he's able to embarrass her Bevoshas Beila, but again, he can embarrass her in this fashion by giving her over to some husband who would not be somebody that she would want to marry. He can give her over for kiddushin with bia lemenuva lemukashchin kiretanan lekamon or avzakai bevito b'kiddusha bekesef of ishtar of avia. He's able to give her over in kiddushin, that includes kiddushin bebia. V'keven deviyado litol mamon, and since it's possible for him to take money lepogmo levaisha in order to again to damage her, to embarrass her, he could take money for this kiddushin, and she's going to end up marrying a menuvel and mukashchin. So busha zu hashta afsidei hai depagma. So really, this person who was the one who devalued her, who raped her, so really he's really taken away, so to speak, from the father, and that's why it's logical that this payment should go to the father. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. Pegam, how do we evaluate how she went down in terms of value? Roano sakilu hi shivcha nimkaris. We view her as if she would be a shivcha that would be sold on the marketplace, a maidservant, and we say, how much did she go down in value because of this onus? And the Gemara says, heichi shaiminon law. So how exactly do we make this evaluation? And the Gemara says, Amar Avuah de Shmuel, the father of Shmuel, says, Omdin, we make the following evaluation. Kama adam rotza lita, and how much would a person want to pay? Bein shivcha besula l'shivcha beula. How much of a difference in money would a person pay for a shivcha who was a besula, who was a virgin, versus a shivcha who was a bula, who already had relations, l'shamsho, in order to serve him? And the Gemara says, shivcha beula l'shamsho, my nafkale mina. What does the person care whether the shivcha is a besula or beula if she's doing work for him? So that doesn't make sense. And so the Gemara says, ella rather bein shivcha beula l'shivcha she'ena beula l'hasiya la'avdo. Let's say the person wants to marry off this shivcha to his eved. So in that situation, there might be a difference between getting a shivcha who is a beula and a shivcha who is a besula. And the Gemara says, well, avdo my nafkale mina. But again, for his slave, what does he care? What does the owner care? What does the master care? Whether he's giving his slave a shivcha besula or a shivcha beula? And to that, the Gemara says, no, be'eved sheyesh lo l'rabba koras ruachim. And we're talking about an eved where the master has a good relationship with him. The eved works for him very well. He wants to do him something good, and so therefore he would pay a different amount in order to give the eved a shivcha besula. Rashi over here says, my nafkale l'chol adam bevilasim Asim Be'ula Yehola V'Lamalacha Kaim. If she's doing work, who cares whether she's a Be'ula or Besula? And then the Gemara said, Ula Avdo my Nafkale Lamarimina. What does the master care if he's giving her to the Eved, whether she's in Be'ula, if she's a Be'ula or not? Mikapin Mari, does the master care about that? Ela Shiula and Vlados, all he wants is the children, so why would the master care? And the answer is no, Koras Ruach Shazor Ba'avodaso. We're talking about where he has a slave, where he has an Eved who's very careful in his work. V'af hu wrote Salasos lo Nachas Ruach La'atimo Tam Besula. So therefore, the owner, the master, wants to do something nice for the Eved. He wants to give him a Besula, and so therefore, again, in this case, he would pay more money, so there is a different evaluation, and that's the amount of money that is paid in this situation. And the Gemara continues with the Mishnah, Kol Makom Sheyesh Mecher Ein Knas. Any situation where there's a possibility to sell the person's daughter as a maidservant, in those situations, if she is raped, there is no Knas payment, there is no fine. V'chol Makom Sheyesh Knas, and anytime there is a fine, anytime there's a payment in terms of a situation of ones, Ein Mecher, so for that kind of girl, he's not allowed to sell her as a maidservant. And the Mishnah explains, Ketana, for example, if you have a minor, Yesh La Mecher, so it's possible to sell her, V'ein La Knas, and therefore there is no Knas in that situation. Nara, let's say you have a Nara, again, she has the signs of maturity, that's for the 6 months until she's considered a Bogeres, so Yesh La Knas, so she does receive a Knas, V'ein La Mecher, and it's not possible to sell her. Ha Bogeres, now if you have a Bogeres, again, that is a full adult girl, Ein La Lo Mecher V'lo Knas, so for her, there is no Mecher and there is no Knas. Rashi over here says, Kol Makom Sheyesh Mecher La'ab Bevito Dahainu Bekatanu, so again, it means to say, if she is a Ketana, Ein Lo Ba Knas, so if you can sell her, there's no Knas, the Ein Knas Le Ketana. The Mishnah is saying there is no Knas for a Ketana. Kol Makom Sheyesh Knas Mishi Nara, now if she's a Nara and there is a Knas, Ein Mecher, then he can't sell her. The Tanya, and that's as we learned in a Braisa, Yachol Yimchor Adam Bito Kishi Nara. I might think that a person can sell his daughter when she's a Nara, but that is not the case. Amrit Mechura Kvar Yotza. We say if she was sold previously, she actually goes free when she's a Nara. So Achshav She'ena Mechura, if she hasn't been sold yet, Eino Din Shaloti Machir. Isn't it logical that she cannot be sold as a Nara? And the Gemara says, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Zu Divrei Rabbi Meir. This is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Rashi says, Do Amar Ein Knas LeKetana. It's Rabbi Meir's opinion that there is no Knas for a Ketana. Aval Chachamim Omrim, but the Chachamim say, Yesh Lo Knas B'Makom Mecher. There is a Knas, even though it's a situation of Mecher, there is a Knas as well. The Tanya, as we learned in a Braisa, Ketana, when it comes to a Ketana, Mibasio Mechod Viad Shetavish De Saros, from the time she's 1 day old until she has the 2 hairs of maturity, Yesh La Mecher Ve'ein La Knas, there is a possibility of selling her in that case, and there is no Knas in that situation. Again, that is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Mishetavish De Saros Ad Shetivagan, from the time that she has the 2 hairs until she becomes a Bogeres, Yesh La Knas, and then she receives the Knas, Ve'ein La Mecher, it's not possible to sell her. Divrei Rabbi Meir. Again, that is the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Shahaya Rabbi Meir Omer, because Rabbi Meir would say, Kol makom sheyesh mecher ein knas. If there is mecher, there's no knas. V'chol makom sheyesh knas ein mecher. And if there is a knas, then there is no sale. The Chachamim Omer, and the Chachamim say, Ketana, when it comes to a Ketana, mibaz gimul shonim v'yom mecher, from the time that she is 3 years old and a day, ve'ad shati boger, until she becomes a bogeres, yesh lo knas. She does indeed receive a knas in that situation. Again, the Chachamim say that a Ketana does receive knas, and the Gemara says knas in mecher lo. Did the Chachamim mean to say that there's a knas and there's no ability to sell her? That can't be. Ema no, rather say what the Chachamim mean is af knas b'makom mecher. Not only is she able to be sold, there is even a knas, even though it's a situation where a sale is possible. And Rashi says, Mibas Gimel Shanim, why do the Chachamim say that it's from 3 years old specifically? Shebiyasa Bia, because that's when the act of relations is considered relations. The Ein Besula Chosr, and that's when the signs that she's a Besula will not return. Mecher Lo, the Gemara says, do you mean to say that there's no sale at that time? And the Gemara says, no, it means Af Knas, B'Makom Mecher, there's Knas and Mecher. Mishetehei Ru'uyu Labia, Achatavish Tesaros, again, from the time she is fit for having relations until she has the 2 hairs, Havit Tarvayu. That's when both of them are in application. Umeshehevia Saros, and from the time that she brings forth the saros, the hairs, until she's a bogeres, knas v'lo mecher. At that time there's knas, but there is no mecher. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Chisda says, My time of Rabbi Meir. What is the reason of Rabbi Meir? Why does he say that when it comes to a katana, there's no knas? Amar Kra, because the pasuk says, Velosia leisha. By onus, what does it say? It says again that to him she has to be a wife, he has to marry her. And that means, B'mahava atzma hakosem medaber. We're talking about a woman who is able to marry herself off, meaning to say she's considered an adult. That's why it has to be that we're talking about a nara and not a katana. A katana does not receive the knas, according to Rabbi Meir. Meir. And the Gemara continues v'Rabbanan. Now, what did the Rabbanan respond? Amar Reish Lakish says Amar Kra, because the pasuk says Na'ara. Now, the idea over here is that it's written in Nar, but it's pronounced Na'ara, but it's written Chaser. So afilu katana b'mashma. Even if it says the word Na'ara, but without the hey, if it's written without the hey, that implies she doesn't actually have to be a Nara. It's even talking about a katana. Even a katana will receive the knas. And the Gemara continues, Shama Rav Papa Bereder Rav Chanan mi Beikluchis. Rav Papa, the son of Rav Chanan from Beikluchis, heard this. Azal Amra Kami de Rav Shimi Barashi. He went and he said it in front of Rav Shimi Barashi. Amar Le, and Rav Shimi Barashi responded. He said to him, Atun ahomas nisula. You learn this statement of Reish Lakish on this case over here by onus, this idea that if it says Nara but it's missing the hey, then it means a katana. But anon ahomas ninala. But we learn it on the following. We learn that Reish Lakish made that statement in reference not to this case of onus, but rather to motzi shemra. Amar Reish Lakish said, "Hamotzi shemra la katana potter." If a person is motzi shemra on a katana, meaning to say that he says that his wife is not a basula, but she is a minor. The case over here is by a minor, so then he's potter from paying the meo kesef. The pasuk says that a motzi shemra, if a person says slander about his wife, claiming she's not a basula and really she was a basula, so he has to pay meo kesef. It says v'nosnu la'avi hanara meo kesef. So over there, Reish Lakish is saying that's only true by avi hanara. It has to be a real nara. But if it's a katana, if she's a minor, there is no meo kesef. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, v'nosnu la'avi hanara. It says again the word nara, na'ara mole diber hakasav, and it says the word nara in a full way, meaning it says it with the hey, and therefore we understand it to mean it's a nara specifically and not a katana. And the Gemara continues, Maskefla Ravada Barava. Ravada Barava asks on this taima, to Kosav Rachmana, Nara is the only reason because it said Nara. Again, the point over here is that Reish Lakish is making this distinction between Nara with a hey and Nara without a hey on Motzi Shemra. But Ravada Barava asks, is that the reason that we know it's Nara because it has a hey? Halav hachi havamina afilu katana. If it didn't have a hey, I would think a katana. That can't even be true. Vaksiv, but the pasuk says, V'im emes haya hadavar hazel. Let's say it is true what the person said. Lo nimtzu besulam lenara, that there is no besulam for the nara. It turns out that she was not a besula. V'otziu es hanara el pesach beisaviv skalu. It says you're going to bring out the nara and you're going to give her the punishment of skila. It's clear that she has to be an adult. Ukatana lav basonchani, because we know that a katana, a minor, a girl who is a minor, would not be able to be punished in this manner. You wouldn't be able to give her skila. So therefore, it's clear anyway that we're talking here about a nara. So why does Reish Lakish say that we learn out from the full word nara with a hey that it's a nara? It's clear from the context because it talks about skila that it's a nara. And so the Gemara continues, Elakan nara. Rather, what Reish Lakish means to say is that over here it says the word nara and it writes it out full with a hey, and that's to tell you hakol makom shenemar nar. Any other place where it's written as nar, again it's pronounced nara, afilu katana b'mashma. It tells us that in all of those other places it would mean even a katana. Rashi over here explains, Elakan nara haidich nara mole. The reason why it says nara full over here by Motzi Shemra, lav legaluya elo asa. It's not to tell us that over here we're talking about a real nara, because that's obvious again, because she gets skila. Ela al kol makom shenemar nar chaser v'yolef hachi. Rather, what it's saying is any other time it says nara, but it says it chaser, it writes it as nar. We're supposed to learn out that in those cases it's talking even about a katana. V'yolef hachi kanshi efshar ela benara ksiv nara mole ulalamercha d'chol makom shenemar na'ara, with the word na'ar afilu katana b'mashma. Again, it's to teach us that any other time where it says nara but it drops the hey, that means even a katana. That was the idea of Reish Lakish. By Motzi Shemra, it's obvious we're talking about a nara, but it's written full to say that only when it's written full is it a nara, but in other situations, if it's not written full, then we're talking even about a katana. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph.